Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining, everybody. And according to our friend Chris over there at Bourbon of the Week, we are the kings of the single barrels. We sent Chris a flight of some of our favorite barrel picks to date, and he put them in blinds against other picks chosen by Stuff and Whiskey, Mash and Journeys Whiskey Club, and SLB Drinks. And after 4 rounds of scoring, Hello Again, whiskey friends came out on top with our collaborator, Dusty Dan and Drifting Drams, to take the first title on what may be an ongoing series for Chris. And essentially dropping at the same time of this video, our next barrel pick is coming available. Walleye Run Malted Rye, coming from New Holland. This one is 8 years old and 123.9 proof. It'll be available exclusively on Shared Pour. And the best part about it is the price, $59.99 for an 8-year single barrel malted rye. So we're going to go through the tasting notes on this one today, but I also have a little bit of an interesting experience. I have some of the sample that came directly from the barrel that day, and I can do a comparison for the first time live with you. So thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right, let's get these poured out here. That way they can air out as we're chatting. But our friends over there at New Holland were absolutely amazing hosts. Shout out to Mackenzie and Pete. Thank you so much for showing us a good time that day. So back in May, we found ourselves in Michigan at New Holland, where we picked this barrel in collaboration with Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews, Drifting Drams, Adam Shelton, Dunny, the Bourbon Jerk, and the World's Worst Bourbon Channel. And big shout out to Gary over there at the World's Worst Bourbon Channel for getting us hooked on New Holland's whiskey years ago with some banger picks. This was on our bucket list for 2025, and we pulled it off. So in my Hello Again whiskey friend Glenn, I have the final product. And then in the Whiskey Riffs Lounge, I've got the original barrel that was selected in May. New Holland did us a big solid. We had a lot of picks coming out this summer, and we were just worried about the traffic jam. New Holland agreed, even though we picked the barrel, to keep it in their rickhouse all the way through August so it could hit an 8-year age statement. And we're going to go through the experience a little bit here side by side, but I was so surprised about what a few summer months can do to a barrel, even a barrel that's already essentially at that 8-year age statement. You'd think 3 months is just a little bit of its life cycle, but wow, did it pick up some flavors this summer. Really elevated it even beyond my expectations, which were already lofty. So for those that do choose to pick up the bottle, come back to this video, hang out with me, and go through these tasting notes together. I think these tasting notes in particular are very, very interesting. All right, let's get into the nose, then we'll get into the palate, into the finish, and talk about some final thoughts. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for joining me this far. And if you're still here, hit that like and subscribe. Really does help the channel and helps keep you informed with the things we got going on. I mean, the nose on this one is really going to set a strong first impression on you. The core note that is at the heart of this is essentially a grilled peach, but there is all types of brown sugar and molasses in that as well. I even get a little bit of what I would describe as a coffee cake with that cinnamon brown sugar crumble on top. So just think a warm cake with some grilled peaches on top. That's too fancy for you, just go with the peach cobbler. But that's what you're getting mainly off the nose here, and that peach note is going to carry through as we talk about the palate. All right, let's go in for a sip. Cheers, everybody. Oh, yeah. Woo! I love that note. Up front, all peaches and cream. And although a lot of the experience, I mean, it hangs right there at that 8 years. There's this nice char to balance that brightness and sweetness from that peaches and cream. And the mouthfeel is just ridiculous here. Here, I'll kind of show my glass there so you can see how oily this thing is. I mean, to be quite frank, that is the main characteristic I expect off of anything picked by Hello Again whiskey friends. It's got to have the mouthfeel. And I feel like if it has the mouthfeel, it typically always has a finish. And when it has time to have that little extra age in that barrel too, oh my gosh, that mouthfeel seems to get even thicker. All right, let's get into mid-palate. Mid-palate, those spices return, the brown sugar, the cinnamon, the molasses. Grilled peach is of course there, but it's real interesting, and it's gotten a little more pronounced as I've gotten further into the bottle, is a little bit of a dark cherry. I think Darrell was the first one to pick up on that. Once you get past those fruits, man, that coffee cake is still there for me. I really like that note. All right, let's get into the finish here. On the finish is where the oak influence definitely comes back. You begin to really feel that 8 years, which really, other than a little char up front, didn't really expose its age until then. The finish is also where you really get the rye spice, and man, does it hang. It is just all over the sides and the back of my tongue right now, just with that spice just attacking things. Most of the lingering flavors is still around that grilled peach and the molasses. There's a little bit of citrus, a little bit of orange that does pop up on the finish as well. So you got a whole range of fruits going on beyond just the peach. Really keeps things interesting. And if you've never had New Holland before, man, there's something about the malt and the yeast that they use. It does have that beer DNA to it. And that really, really goes nice with the malted rye. I'll have to compare this to New Riff's malted rye at some point. I think I even have an 8-year high note that might be barrel proof of that malted rye. I'll have to double check that. But man, this one's good. I like this one a lot. And I know Durrell. I think Durrell's actually the highest amongst the pick team on this particular one. You know, we still grade our stuff behind the scenes, even though, you know, what good is it grading your own stuff? For Durrell, this actually graded higher than any of our prior single barrels for him. And I think it's because it just earned so many nines across the board. You know, it really doesn't have a big fault that you can push on. So I'm not too surprised that it scored high, especially at that price. So what's interesting in this, and this is where I want to spend a little bit of time at the end of this video, but talking about that barrel picking process. Yes, this is the one that of course stood out. When we were there live, I think they opened like 8 different barrels for us. We blinded a few things. Of course, we always do. And I think this one was a pretty concentrated vote. I think like 75% of us were on the same page. And there were a lot of good palates at this pick. But what is wild, though, is how much this thing changed from May. That summer season added so much depth to this whiskey in just 3 months. I really think this one changed the most of any of the ones that we've picked in between the period that we picked it and it got barreled. And that's always an interesting thing when you're picking barrels, because every company kind of like runs on their own timeline on when things will hit bottling. Some companies are able to move really, really fast, like the Evernorth pick. I mean, gosh, those were in the bottle like 3 weeks after we picked it on the same trip. But other companies, like we got Jack picks on the way, I mean, that's probably going to spend an extra 6 months in the barrel. Once again, trust the mouthfeel and good things happen. That's just my philosophy here. So in the Whiskey Riffs Lounge glass here, we do have a little bit of the original sample thieved from the barrel that we picked. And what's wild on this is like on the nose, it's almost like I talked about grilled peaches a lot on the final product. You know, it picked up that char over the course of the summer. That is not there. This is a more bright, even like a peachy jam versus it being like a grilled peach. The cakiness is there, but that whole brown sugar and molasses is also not there on the nose. So it's more like a peach jam on top of angel food cake than necessarily the grilled peach on top of the brown sugar molasses coffee cake thing. That's my favorite part of it. That's what's wild, is it gains something that's now my favorite part of it beyond the time that we spent with it. In for a sip, and I'll go through some of the similarities and differences as well. Cheers, everybody. Yeah, mouthfeel. Oh yeah, definitely rich and oily. Not as spicy on the finish. It actually finishes kind of sweet compared to the spiciness that lingers now. Man, it is such a peach bomb. A little bit of that cherry is there though. I guess that was there from the start, but it lacks the darker notes that balance this thing out in the end. That's crazy to me. I mean, I was really, really happy with what we picked, but then what came to us is just a little bit better. Hopefully we can get more people just to sit on barrels over the summer for us. Do us a solid. Like seriously, if I was doing like a review on each of these are like 4 points separating from each other here. Like meaningfully different. And that's great. Just goes to show some of the imperfect science that goes into this picking process, though. You pick and you hope for the best. And if they get to sit on the barrel a little longer, you hope that it emerges even better than what won the blind that day. But this one is special. If you've not given New Holland or the Walleye Run a chance yet, this is like a perfect introductory getting into the brand. It's going to set the bar high, but I think you're going to dig Walleye Run going forward. There'll be a brand on your radar. Shout out again to everybody at New Holland for showing us such a good time. And cheers to all of our collaborators who helped us bring home another great barrel to this community. And who knows, maybe this will be one of the samples we submit to Chris if he does another round of the King of the Single Barrel Tournament. Thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. And just remember, while you can always find more whiskey, you can never have enough whiskey friends. So take care of those around you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching Hello Again, whiskey friends, everybody. A big shout out to our amazing Patreon community. If it wasn't for you, we couldn't continue to produce the content and barrel picks week after week. And for everybody else out there, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. It really helps the channel more than you know. And we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.